request method is get. Request method is get. Input type is nothing. Input now not applicable. Output JSON data. Output is application / JSON. Endpoint URL is this. Somebody developed one application. When you access this URL, they will give you JSON data. You need to send a GET request for this URL. You need to make a GET request for this URL. This is the endpoint URL. Request we need to send is the GET. You no need to send any input data, but it is going to give you output data. How that output data will look like? The output data will look like this. The output data will look like this. This is the output data. Contact ID, contact name, contact ID, contact name, contact email, contact number, active switch, created date and updated date. This is the data that you are going to get as output. Okay, there may be one record or there may be multiple records. You will get the output of maybe one record or maybe multiple records. That depends upon how much data available in the table. Let's assume that you will get multiple records as output. Let's assume that you will get multiple records as output. Okay. Can you analyze this API? Now we need to develop a client for this API. We need to develop a client for this API. Got my point? Endpoint URL, request method, input, output. Endpoint URL, https:/phonebook-ashokit.herokuapp.com/contacts. Request method is get. Input, no need to give any input for this API, but this API giving output as a JSON data. This is the JSON data. Can we develop the client? Can we develop the client for this API? Somebody developed this API. This is API documentation. Can we develop a API? Can we develop the logic to access this API? Chalo, let's start. Let's start. Let's create one application to access the REST API. File, new, Spring Starter project. It is going to be our 40th application. 40th application, Spring Boot REST Client App 2. 40 Spring Boot REST Client App 2. Click on next. Web Starter, DevTools, Lombok. That's it. I'm taking Web Starter, I'm taking Lombok, and I'm taking DevTools. Web, Lombok, DevTools. Click on next, click on finish. Click on next, click on finish. I have created one project which is going to act as a REST client. By using this REST client, I will access REST API. By using this REST client, I will access REST API. Kiran Prasad already developed this logic. Kiran Prasad already developed this logic. Very good, Kiran. Very good, Kiran. Now, I will develop this logic for you. Guys, please observe what is the code that I'm going to write to develop client program to access REST API, which is developed by somebody. I'm going to develop the client logic for accessing REST API, which is developed by somebody. Okay? Chalo. Now, the very first thing is, let's declare what is our endpoint URL. String URL. Which URL you want to access? Which URL you want to access? So this is my endpoint URL. String URL is equal to, I'm giving this URL. Now, in order to access the REST API, we are having REST template. Let's create the object for REST template. REST template RT is equal to new REST template. It is predefined class available in Spring Framework. I have imported package for REST template. org.springframework.web.client.rest template. This is the package name. I'm using REST template, so I have imported this package. Got it. Next, I want to send a request for this URL. Okay. Now tell me, when I access this URL, what is the response I am getting? When I access this URL, what is the response we are going to get, guys? We will get, what happened to this? It is not giving any data. Right. Now, generally, when you access this URL, it is going to give the data in the JSON format, in the string format. It is going to give the data in the JSON format. Cool. Cool. It is going to give us the data in the JSON format. Got my point? We'll get the data in the JSON format. How can we access that REST API which will give the data in the JSON format? How can we access the REST API which will give the data in the JSON format? Fine. In order to understand the documentation, we are having a swagger for this URL. We are having a swagger for this URL which will give the data in the JSON format. Which will give the data in the JSON format. Let me add one record for that. Active switch y email abc@gmail.com. ID is 101. Name is something like ABC. Number, some value. Created date, updated date not required. Execute. Now let's go for contacts. Now we are getting one contact record. We are getting one contact record. Okay. Now I want to access that data from my client program. rt.get for entity. rt.get for entity, because I want to make a GET request to access that REST API. That REST API will give it, the REST API is giving JSON data for me. The REST API is giving me JSON data. Okay, how to make a GET request? rt.get for entity. rt.get for entity. I'm giving the URL, a response type. What is the response type that I need to provide? Can I hold that JSON data in the string variable? Can I hold that JSON data in the string variable? String variable I am using for response type. Get for entity of this URL, and this URL, when I hit this URL, it is giving JSON data. That JSON data I am storing into string variable. Now let's store this response into one variable that is called response entity. Let's get the actual body from that entity. For entity dot get body. For entity dot get body. For entity dot get body, which is going to give the response body. Chalo, string body. Let's print that body on the console and verify. System.out.println. Let's print that body. Now, this application I want to run on port number 9090. For that I will use server.port. I will use server.port is equal to 9090. Now let's run this application. Run this application as Spring Boot application. See the response that we are getting. Are you able to get the response from the API? Are we able to get the response from the API? Come on, guys. Are we able to get the response from the API? Are we able to get the response from the API? Yes, we got the response from the API. Okay. Currently, now the response we are getting from the API in which format, guys? The response we are getting from the API in which format? JSON format. Now, can I convert that JSON response into Java object? Because we are developing a Java application. In the Java application, everything will be represented in the form of objects. Now, I want to convert this JSON. Whatever the response I am getting from API, I want to represent in the object format. Whatever the response I am getting from the API, I want to convert into object format. Can I convert that response into object format? Tell me a simple thing. API sending me object or API sending me JSON? When I access the REST API, is it sending me object or it is sending me JSON? Why it is sending me JSON? Why my API sending me JSON? Why my API sending me JSON data? Is there any reason that my API is sending JSON data? Is there any reason why my API is sending JSON data? For interoperability. My API is sending JSON data for interoperability. I don't know that API developed by using which technology. We don't know that API is developed by using which technology. That API developed by using Java, or that API developed by using .NET, or it is developed by using Python. We don't know that API developed by which technology, right? But we are developing Java application to develop that API. Now, when two applications are interacting, when two applications are communicating, they need to use data in the interoperable format. Okay, so what is the interoperable format for multiple applications? What is the common format that people will use to exchange the data? XML and JSON. Java can understand XML, .NET can understand XML. Java can understand JSON, .NET can understand JSON. Now do you understand why my API giving JSON data? API is giving JSON data for interoperability. Now okay, so that API developed by using .NET, we don't know whether it is a .NET or Java or Python, we don't know. That API is giving the data in the JSON format. Now, I have developed a Java program to access that API. I have developed a Java program to access that API. That API is giving JSON data. JSON data I am representing in the string format. JSON means the data with the key value. I am representing that complete JSON data in the string format. I am storing into string variable. So that's why I have specified get for entity which API you want to access, the URL of the API. The API giving some data as a response, right? that response I want to store into string type variable. That's why I have specified string.class. I have specified string.class. For entity, get body, response came, response will have a header, response will have a body. I want to store the response data into string variable. So first get the response data from the body. For entity dot get a body. That body I stored into string. I'm printing that string on the console. System.out.println of a body. Whatever the response we are getting from the API, that is printing on the console. Now my requirement is, whatever the JSON I got, I want to convert the JSON into Java object. I want to convert the JSON into Java object. Guys, do you know how to convert the JSON into Java object? Do you know how to convert the JSON into Java object? Simple. Do you know how to convert the JSON into Java object? By using Jackson. But tell me one thing. Sending a request to API, receiving the response in the JSON format, converting the JSON to Java object, is it only our project requirement, or it is universal requirement? Universal requirement. Do I need to write the logic separately for that? Spring Boot will take care of that. Come on guys. Do I need to convert that JSON into Java object, or Spring Boot will take care of it? Spring Boot will take care of it. Why? Because accessing the REST API, getting the JSON response, converting the JSON response to Java object, that is not our project. That is not only our project requirement. That is universal requirement. Everybody needs that kind of logic. Sending a request to REST API, get the JSON response, convert the JSON response to Java object, and perform your operation. That is not only our project requirement, that is universal requirement. So Spring Boot is providing that logic for you. Simple example, sir. Simple example. IRCTC application is available. Okay. Now here, Make My Trip application is available. Make My Trip application, or Make My Trip, or Yatra, whatever it is. Yatra. Yatra. End user is there, who is communicating with Yatra. I am the customer of Yatra. I would like to use Yatra application. Now, Yatra application will communicate with the IRCTC. IRCTC will send the response to Yatra. IRCTC will send the response to Yatra. Yatra will send JSON to IRCTC. IRCTC will send the JSON to Yatra. Now, customer will give the data form submit. Customer will do form submit response. This is how the real-time communication will happen. This is how the real-time communication will happen. I am the end user. I want to book a ticket by using Yatra. Train ticket by using Yatra. I will log in into Yatra. I will fill up the form in the Yatra. I will submit the request. Now, when I submit the request to Yatra, Yatra will have the data in the form of object. Now, object will be converted to JSON. Object will be converted to JSON. JSON data will go to IRCTC. JSON data will go to IRCTC. IRCTC will perform the operation. IRCTC will send the JSON. Now what we need to do? That JSON data we need to convert into object to perform our operation. Okay. Client side, this is resource. This is resource. This is resource application. This is called as what, guys? This is resource application and this is client application. Resource application and client application. End user is talking to Yatra. Yatra is acting as a client. End user filling up the form to submit book ticket. Now Yatra will take the data in the form of object, form binding object. That object data will be converted to JSON. JSON data will go to resource. That is a REST API. REST API will perform the operation. REST API will send the JSON as a response. REST API will send the JSON as a response. Can we send the JSON directly to the client? End user will understand the JSON. End user will not understand the JSON. End user will understand the JSON. End user will not understand the JSON. End user will not understand the JSON. Then what should we do? Client side we need to convert the JSON data to Java object. Sir, why we need to convert the JSON to Java object? Can we ask this API to send the object to directly? Can we take the API? Can we take the object from the API directly? Can we take object from the API directly? Is it recommended? Is it recommended? It is not recommended. Why it is not recommended? Why it is not recommended, guys? Why it is not recommended? Universal formats. Today, our client is Java client. Tomorrow, if there is a Python client, can Python client understand the Java object? No. That's why we are going to take only JSON. Now, at the client side, I want to convert the JSON data to Java object. I no need to do that. I no need to do that. I no need to do that. Spring Boot will do that. Spring Boot will do that. Okay. I need to tell to Spring Boot. I need to tell to Spring Boot. The response should be converted into which class object. I need to tell to Spring Boot that response should be converted to which object. First of all, do you have the class to convert that? We don't have it. Let's create one class which will represent response structure. New class. The response coming as a contact. Okay. Let me take one contact class. What is the response I'm getting? Contact ID, contact name, contact email, all these things I'm getting. Now, this is my response data. Contact ID, contact name, email, number, switch, date, created date, updated date, all these things are coming as our response. All these things are coming as response. Now, to hold this response, I need to create my variables. The response is a single object or the response is an array? Guys, observe. The response is a single object or the response is an array? The response is an array. Array means more than one object. Array means more than one object. Okay, now private int contact ID. Perfect. Next one. The remaining one is private string contact name. Private string contact name. The next one, private contact email. I need to bind the data to this class now. That's why I'm creating all these things. Private long contact number. Private long contact number. Private string active switch. Private string active switch. Private string create date. Private string created date. Private string created date. Private string updated date. Private string updated date. It's not one object, it is combination of multiple objects. Okay. Let's have setters getters by using @data, that is Lombok. Let's have setters getters, that is Lombok. That is Lombok. You got my point? Setters getters, that is Lombok. Lombok. This is the class which is used to. This is the class which is used to represent single record. But our response is a single record, or our response is multiple records. Our response is a single record, or our response is multiple records. Multiple records. But this class will represent only single record. How can I represent multiple records? New class contacts. Then list of contacts. I will be getting more than one contact. I will be getting more than one contact. List of contact. I will be taking as contacts. To support multiple records, then let's generate setters getters for this contacts. Now, can I use this class to represent multiple records coming in the response? Contacts class. Inside the contacts, we have list of contacts. We have list of contacts. Now go here. This is the logic to access raw data, raw response. What I mean by raw response, whatever the JSON is coming, that JSON directly we are taking and storing into string variable. Now here, I don't want to store the response in the string. I want to store the response in the object format. rt.get for entity URL, response type. What is our URL? URL is there. What is the response type? Response type is contacts.class. Response type is contacts.class. I want to store the response in the contacts format. Okay. For entity.getBody, I will get the contacts object. When I access getBody, I will get the contacts object. Now, body.getContacts, which will give list of contacts. Which will give list of contacts. Now what I will do? Contacts dot for each. Contacts dot for each contact of system dot out dot println of contact. I just want to print the contacts. I just want to print that contact. Cannot the deserialize the value of array token, JSON token start array. JSON token of start array. Okay? Let's stop this application. Now I'm trying to run this application which is used to access the data in the form of JSON. That JSON is coming as an array. That means more than one record will come as JSON response. That JSON data will give you more than one record in the array format. If you want to keep that JSON data in the string format directly, you can specify the response type as string.class. You can specify the response type as string.class. But actually, when you are accessing the APIs, client application sending the request to resource application sending the response to client. Client will receive JSON, but I don't want to use the JSON as it is to perform the operation at the client side. After getting the JSON, I want to convert into object. Spring Boot will take care. But how can I tell to Spring Boot to convert the response to JSON? I am telling that after sending the GET request to this URL, you will get some response. You represent that response in this object format. Here I am specifying the response as a string type. Here I am specifying the response as a context type. Here we will get the JSON data as it is. Here we will get the data in the JSON. Then it will be converted to object. Context. What is context? Context is a class which is representing list of contact object. So whatever the array that we are getting, that array will be converted, that JSON array will be converted into our contacts class object. And whenever you call get body, you will get the contacts. Body.get contacts, you got the list of contacts, and we are iterating that contacts. Then whenever you run this program will send a request to this REST API which is developed by somebody. We don't know. Somebody developed this REST API by using some technology. We are accessing that REST API. That REST API is giving the JSON data. That JSON data I am converting into Java object. Actually, I am not converting. I am telling to my Spring Boot to convert that. For that response, representing that response, to represent that response into Java object format, I have created one binding class. Whatever the JSON data will come from the REST API, that JSON data should be converted into this Java object. For that I have created one binding class. But the thing is, I'm not going to get only one record in the response. I'm getting multiple records in the response. That's why I have specified one class which can represent multiple contact records. This is a collection. Now, this is my program which will represent a collection of records as a response, and it will get the JSON. That JSON will be converted to Java object. Guys, now do you understand how to access one application from another application? Do you understand how to access one application from another application? Somebody developed that REST API, we don't know. Somebody developed that REST API, we don't know. We are just accessing that REST API from our program. Similarly, IRCTC developed by somebody. Make My Trip Yatra developed by somebody. Yatra application sending the request to IRCTC REST API. IRCTC REST API sending the response to Yatra application. Yatra is acting as a client application. IRCTC acting as a resource application. You got my point? You got my point? Can I say it is a business to business communication application? Can I say this is business to business communication application? Yes, this is called as business to business communication application, B2B. One application developed REST API, another application accessing that REST API. These applications are communicating by using JSON data. Client application sending JSON data to REST API application. REST API application sending JSON data back to client application as a response. Okay guys, you understand my point? What I'm trying to do here? I'm developing a REST API or I'm developing a client application. Am I developing REST API? Am I developing client here? What is this program doing? What is this program doing? This program is acting as a REST client. That means this program is accessing the REST API developed by somebody. This program is accessing the REST API which is developed by somebody. Third party API we are accessing from our application. Third party API we are accessing from our application. Third party API we are accessing from our application. Good. Guys, just for your understanding, I have explained this REST template. Tomorrow I will tell you how to work with the web client because REST template is already outdated. In the industry, people are using web client. So tomorrow we will understand how to develop the REST client by using a web client. Web client is recommended. REST template is outdated. We are going to use web client in the real time. Tomorrow I will tell you how to work with the web client. You got my point? You got my point, guys? ठीक है. Somebody developed REST API, Dev Prasad. Somebody developed REST API. This is the URL of their REST API. We are accessing that. Previously, if you observe our workspace, we have developed several REST APIs. Previously, we have developed several REST APIs. Now, we are developing client for REST API which is developed by somebody. Somebody REST API giving contact data as a response. Somebody's REST API is giving contact data as a response. Now, we developed a program to access somebody's REST API. So this is called as REST client. This is called as REST client. You got it? Fine. Yeah. Fine, guys. Guys, I'm getting a call from my office. With this, I am stopping for today. So tomorrow we'll continue our class. Okay? Thank you, guys. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a class. Tomorrow we have a class. Tomorrow we have a class. We'll connect tomorrow. Thank you. Good night.